In 2013, snapped killer couples told the story of Tabitha Messina, a rebellious teen with a turbulent home life.
Tabitha wanted to run wild. She partied, she stayed out all night, she ran with a crazy crowd.
The Messina house was a frequent attraction to the South Euclid Police Department. We got called there for domestic disturbances, loud noise complaints.
The chaos ended with a deadly crime.
They were murdered in a very violent way while they slept in their own bed.
She set the whole thing up. She put everything in motion. She put everything into play.
Now serving a life sentence in the Dayton Correctional Institution, Tabitha Messina opens up for the first time about the night her father and his girlfriend were murdered.
I might not have did the murder, but I was definitely guilty for what happened. Our parents always tell us, like, you know, choose your friends wisely, and it never registered.
She offers herself up in exchange for him sending a message to her father.
He was honest, brutally honest. He was so manipulated by Tabitha.
I am sorry for what happened, and I wish I could turn it back, but I can't. I'm Tabitha Messina, and I wanted to do this interview because I wanted people to hear my side. Usually when people come to prison, they always say, you know, I didn't do the case, I didn't do this. I'm not saying that. I was definitely guilty for what happened.
For my safety, I feel comfortable being silhouetted because I don't need nobody coming after me. I don't. I feel it necessary and I want to speak up for my daughter's behalf. I know both sides of the family are angry. I know they have a right to be angry, but everybody painted her to be a monster. She's not a monster. She was definitely there, yes, for the wrong reason, but murder wasn't the reason.
There's things about the case that are still troubling to me personally. For one, the crime scene. I've never seen that kind of destruction to a human body that was done intentionally. And I think what's troubling is my knowledge of the family. I knew Richard, I knew Tabitha.
On Sunday, July 29, 2007, police in the Cleveland suburb of South Euclid, Ohio, receive a concerning call outside the home of Richard Messina and his girlfriend, Sandra Cover.
911, what's your emergency?
Yeah, hi. I know a family that had an argument, and I'm at the house. The back screen's cut and the window's broken. And I was wondering if you could send an officer over here.
Just don't touch anything, and I'll send some cars over. We'll take a look around, okay?
When officers arrive, they enter through the unlocked back door and cautiously make their way through the house.
Upon checking the house, they discovered in the second floor bedroom, Richard and Sandra deceased. Richard's injuries were chops, which would be indicative of an axe or a knife. Sandra had several elongated bruises.
If you look at Sandy Cover's injuries, you can see that there are a number of defensive type wounds that were sustained to her body, which indicates that she was involved in a fight for her life.
Homicide detectives are immediately called to the scene.
You know, there's jewelry boxes that are open, dresser drawers that have been emptied, its contents poured on the floor.
Walk over to the side of the bed where Richard is, and you see that the comforters and the blankets have been pulled in such a way that they cover his face.
In the midst of this big disarray of the room, someone took the time to put a doily over Sandra's face.
Their faces were covered. Why? That's what killers do when they're familiar with their victims. They cover their face.
As police continue searching the home, they make an ominous discovery in the bedroom of Richard Messina's 18-year-old daughter, Tabitha.
It's a small hatchet-style axe. It's just laying on a bed. There's no blood on it, no signs that it was used in the struggle. that we could not find or account for Tabitha Messina?
Investigators weren't clear as to whether it was sending a message or whether it was an indication of Tabitha's fate.
Now the wheels are really spinning. Where is she? Nobody knows.
Born in 1988, Tabitha Messina was a bright light in her parents' lives.
She looked just like her dad. Curly black hair, big, pretty eyes.
Rick was a big bear of a guy with a big smile and a huge baritone laugh. And he loved family. Family was everything to him.
As a dad, I couldn't have had a better one. He was the only man I've ever loved. He was my best friend. He was my provider. He was my rock. I grew up in a very classy neighborhood. It was like a suburb type of area. Good schools. It was beautiful.
My daughter, she loves sports. She loves basketball. She did soccer. She made good grades.
Unfortunately, her parents' relationship deteriorated in front of young Tabitha.
We got called there for domestic disturbances, loud noise complaints, and she was the suspect in several burglaries and breaking and enterings and thefts and shoplifting, at times taking little Tabitha with her when she shoplifted.
She was in and out of prison over the years. Rick would kick her out. She'd come back begging for money. It was a volatile relationship.
As Tabby's getting older, she's aware of what is going on. And I used to tell her, baby, go on downstairs and play in the family room. But she heard all this. And then she got to the point she would listen to me when I told her to go downstairs. She'd say, Daddy, don't hit my mommy. I know it affected her. I know it did.
Richard and Tabitha's mom split up when Tabitha was 8 years old. Shortly after, he began dating Sandra Cover.
Sandy was Rick's compass. Sandy showed Rick that this is what a good life is, and to be normal as Rick and Sandy could be, but in a loving relationship that they had, Sandy was his normal.
After a whirlwind romance, Sandra moved in with Richard and Tabitha.
Your parents breaking up, you automatically think the other woman is trying to take your mom's place. And I was a hard-headed child. And she put up with so much from me. And the more I pushed, the more she pushed. And she was strong-minded too.
As Tabitha grew up, Richard made sure to set high expectations for his daughter, who struggled to stay out of trouble from an early age.
He tried to guide her. You have a curfew, no drugs.
I first met Tabitha when I was 15. We hit it off right away. She was very outgoing, kind of like that spunky little attitude like I was. So, it was kind of like we were two peas in a pod, pretty much. We were always on like the same type of little misfit trouble.
Surprisingly, Richard gave his blessing when Tabitha began dating a classmate named Jason Gaylord.
Jason, he was the parents' dream. He was handsome, he was charming, and he won my dad over.
Although she had a boyfriend, Tabitha was still exploring her sexuality.
I was bi-curious at a young age, and I was really never into boys. And Jason knew my secret. He tried to change my mind and telling me that he could give me a life that, nobody could give me. It was hard keeping my secret because I felt like my dad would have probably turned his back on me because it would have hurt him. I tried to do everything up to his standards. I thought maybe I could fix myself.
When Tabitha's senior year ended in June 2007, she began thinking about her future.
Growing up, I always loved animals. and I wanted to be a veterinarian. In my family, I was the only one that graduated high school. My dad thought this is my golden egg. She's gonna make me proud. He didn't know how much I really loved him and how he meant to me.
Just 1 month later, South Euclid police have been called to the Messina home, where Richard and Sandra have been murdered and Tabitha is missing.
This was brutal. Brutal. You know, this wasn't somebody who just wanted to see Richard dead, because that would have been breaking the house, shoot him, and leave. No. This was personal. Too personal.
While authorities put out an APB for Tabitha Messina, detectives discover that both family vehicles are also missing, leading them to theorize that there must have been 2 drivers.
Where's Richard's cars? They had the Jimmy and they had a Corvette. This is neither one of them in the driveway. We knew there were 2 people involved. That was obvious. And I'm telling the dispatcher, you need to enter those as stolen and put an armed caution on the occupants. I got a job to do. Doesn't matter who it is. You have a job, and now you have to do everything, because as we like to say when we're doing homicides, we're now doing the work for God.
Coming up, as police search for Tabitha Messina, rumors of a complicated love triangle surface.
I like the excitement, and that's what I was attracted to.
This volatile relationship led to poor choices, a heartbreaking betrayal, and she couldn't face the consequences.
She knows, we know what she did, and the wheels in her mind are spinning. How am I going to get out of this?
South Euclid police investigating the brutal murders of Richard Messina and Sandra Cover are urgently searching for Richard's 18-year-old daughter, Tabitha Messina. After processing the scene, detectives head outside to talk with the mother of Tabitha's boyfriend, Jason Gaylord.
When I arrive at the crime scene, Renee Volna and Ashley Gaylord, who are Jason's mother and sister respectively, are already there. They're giving written statements to the patrol officers.
According to Renee, Jason and Tabitha had gone to South Euclid's annual Home Days festival the previous evening with Tabitha's best friend, Tammy Tabak, and her boyfriend, Carlos Christopher.
Home Days is a carnival type event that the city of South Euclid puts on. You know, it has rides, games, attractions, food, music, fireworks.
Detectives learn that Tammy Tabak and Carlos Christopher are classmates of Tabitha. When detectives try contacting their cell phones, the calls go unanswered.
My best friend in high school was Tammy Tabak. I met Carlos through Tammy. That was Tammy's boyfriend. When I met him, he had this like darkness to him. He was short-tempered. He always tried to be tough. He was always like the macho man.
Carlos really comes from a bad situation where his dad was a gang leader in Brazil. His father was eventually killed. His mother went to prison. And then this family in Ohio adopts Carlos.
Carlos would be with Tammy, and I would be with Jason. And we would go out, we would drink, we would, go to the bowling alley, do things that teenagers did.
So the night before, it's the night of Home Days in South Euclid. She's with her little crew, Carlos, Jason Gaylord, Tammy Tabak. They're just hanging out, having a good time.
Renee tells detectives that when Jason didn't come home later that night, she became concerned.
She was trying to get a hold of him throughout the night. She couldn't. She tried to call Richard and Sandra on their cell phones. They weren't answering. So after she got off work that day, she went to the Messina house.
When detectives reach out to Richard and Sandra's families, they are devastated to learn of the tragedy.
There was so many questions. and shock and horror.
We were all in disbelief, helpless, couldn't do nothing. It was like, holy cow, how did we get to this point?
Richard's family tells detectives that Richard had a tumultuous relationship with his daughter, Tabitha.
She stayed out all night. She ran with a crazy crowd.
The police department got called in several times for verbal arguments between Richard and Tabitha, or her and Sandra. You know, that set into motion the whole thinking of, you know, Tabitha may be involved in this.
Now, after nearly 18 years, Tabitha Messina is ready to tell her side of the story. She starts at the beginning of that fateful night.
Now that I'm older, I've sat and I've replayed that day. And even though I smile and like I'm good company, I'm pretty much suffering every single day because I live with that. It was just a party day, you know, and it turned out to be a nightmare. And it's just something I can't wake up from. Never, never. I see that day every single day.
According to Tabitha, the two couples were hanging out at a local playground after the festival when Tabitha's boyfriend Jason made a surprising gesture.
Jason, he proposed to me, you know, and it was weird because then Carlos proposed to Tammy. He made it out to be like this joke, and I was serious because my sexuality wouldn't have let me, you know, get married at the time. So I felt like, you know, if I married him, I could move out of the house and, you know, have my own life and do what I wanted to do.
A short time later, Tabitha received a phone call from her dad.
So my dad and me got into an argument over a cell phone.
Tabby had Sandy's phone. And she had told her dad, "Dad, I'll be home about 12 or something like that." When he called her, he said, "Tabby, it's like going on 12:30. Dad, I want to stay out with my friends a while longer." Well, they got into it on the phone.
Looking back at the fight, I said some horrible things to him, my dad. And even though he was like an angry person at that day, now I understand, like, he was just scared. He knew something bad was gonna happen if I continued down the same road I was going. And he wasn't really a nurturer. He expressed himself through anger. And I just told him I hated him. And he couldn't tell me about my life no more. I pretty much told him, like, everything you've done for 18 years doesn't matter. And I think I broke his heart that night. My dad asked me to come back home, and I told him no. And he sent the police. Police know pretty much like all of us kids, so they know where our hangout spots are.
Our guys go, they tell her, "You got to take the cell phone back to your dad." And then from what we know, she sends Carlos back with the cell phone.
I was scared to take it back because I knew that he was gonna trap me in the house and I would not be able to leave the house. And he had his ways to intimidate. So Carlos was like, "Well, I'll take it back. You don't have to even go to their house. I got it." And I was like, "All right." And I gave it to him. Well, he ended up going to the house and I stayed back with Jason and Tammy. And he came back like shortly after and said that him and my father had this altercation.
Rick was coming out the garage and Carlos was coming up with the phone. And he like shoved it into Rick's chest.
He tried to stand toe to toe with my dad. And he was mad and told me that my dad disrespected him. So he hit him.
Richard calls and says he was assaulted by Carlos. So our guys take a report. Richard fills out a statement, which he says he'll turn into the station later.
The police ended up rolling up on me and everybody else, and they was like, "Your dad doesn't want you back home."
After Tabitha learned she was no longer welcome in her father's house, she hatched a plan.
I didn't have no money, and my dad had all the money. I'm gonna take his money, I'm gonna take some stuff, and he's gonna feel bad for what he did to me. It was a revenge thing.
Tabitha Messina continues her account of the night that led to the double murder of her father, Richard Messina, and his girlfriend, Sandra Cover.
Me and Carlos went to the house, and I was gonna just take some stuff, and we were gonna pawn it. I knew what I was going for, what was worth money. And Carlos was like, well, where's all, like, expensive things? And I remember, like, he had a safe in his bedroom, and I was like, well, he has it up there. And he was like, well, we're just gonna scare him. Do what you gotta do, grab stuff down here. He went up there by himself for a while. So I didn't know what was going on, so I heard something. So when I went up there, that's when I seen him over my dad. My dad, he didn't know what was going on. Sandy, she ended up waking up. And she was just so scared when I walked into the room, but she came charging me. I had the crowbar because she was a lot bigger than me. And so I hit her again. I was fighting her on the floor, and I kept telling her, please just stop, just stop. I was holding her down, and he finally came over, and he was like, man, get off of her. And he pulled me off of her. And I remember he hit her with the hatchet, and that was it. Like, she was done for. And I've yet to forgive myself due to that night. Because if Carlos was never there, they would still be alive. And I hold myself responsible to that. I was scared to death. I just watched somebody get, like, killed right in front of me. Carlos was like, we gotta change, we gotta do this, we gotta do that. And I was pretty much going with the flow, but, like, not mentally there. And he made me change my clothes, and he changed his. And he had this hat. I'll never forget this hat. And it had, like, stuff on it. And as we were walking out the house, he ended up throwing it in my bushes. And he had me by the arm, and he was like, we gotta get out of here. He said, fast. So he was like, we gotta take their cars. And he was like, you know what? Go where Tammy and Jason were. And he followed behind me. It was like bumper to bumper. He made sure he was directly behind me. And Jason, I remember, gets in the car, and he was, baby, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I was like, nothing. Everything's fine. I was trying to play it off like everything's cool. I was like, you know what? Why don't we just, like, get married and, like, go far, far away from here? Like, I wanted him to save me. Like, I just felt trapped. And he was like, all right, everything's gonna be fine. And I was like, well, we need to get Tammy. So we kept calling her, and I was like, you need to come with us.
Tabitha was like, you, me, Carlos, and Jason, we're all gonna go to Georgia and start a new life together. Like, running away to Georgia, starting a new life, you know, where nobody knew me. It actually sounded good to me at the time. Tabitha and Carlos had shown up in the Jimmy and the Corvette that they had stolen from Rick's house. And that's when I pretty much, like, started getting a bad feeling internally that something wasn't right, but I don't know what happened. Tabitha was driving the Jimmy, and Carlos was driving the Corvette, and Jason was in the car with Tabitha, and I ended up being in the Corvette with Carlos. Carlos and I really didn't have a conversation when I was in the car with him. He was mostly really quiet with me.
So as I'm driving, I'm freaking out. We stopped at this hotel in the parking lot, and we were sitting there, and Jason kept asking me what's wrong. And, well, I didn't know that his mother was worried because she didn't hear from him, and she couldn't get a hold of me. And I'm like, nothing, like, everything's fine. Like, everything's fine. They didn't ask about my parents. So I was like, everything's fine. Jason's cell phone rings. And all of a sudden, I remember His color drained from his face, and I knew something was wrong.
His mom calls and talks to him on the cell phone after she finds a break-in at the Messina house and convinces them to turn around and come back home.
He kept trying to tell me, like, you gotta come back with me. Come back with me. And I was like, no, I'm not coming back. And Jason was like, I'm gonna take this car. Come back with me. Let's go home. And I was like, I can't go home. And I wanted to so bad. I kept trying to tell Jason, we just gotta get out of here. So I headed without him. And Carlos was like, you go your way, we go our way, type thing. And him and Tammy ended up taking the car.
Jason and Tammy, they're in West Virginia somewhere on 77. And they turn around and come home.
We were met by like 15 to 20 cop cars and brought in for questioning. We were handcuffed at that point because the police really didn't know, honestly, who was involved in the situation.
Coming up, Tabitha and Carlos are apprehended, but questions remain about the crime's true mastermind.
She was scared of Carlos. She thought he was going to kill her, too.
Tabitha manipulated him to do her bidding.
July 29th, 2007. Detectives in South Euclid, Ohio sit down with Tammy Tabak and confront her about the murders of Richard Messina and Sandra Cover. Tammy claims she knows nothing about it and instead opens up about a complicated dynamic between her boyfriend, Carlos Christopher, and her best friend, Tabitha Messina.
At that time, I was actually supposed to be dating Carlos, and Tabitha was supposed to be dating Jason. I'm not sure exactly when, and I'm not sure exactly like what happened, but Tabitha and Carlos themselves had told me that they were sexually involved with each other. That night, I saw them sitting there, like kind of like holding hands or like sitting next to each other, like close together in like an intimate way. When the group had left the playground, Jason and I ended up walking next to each other, and Tabitha and Carlos were kind of like, if I had to give a guess, maybe 500 to 1,000 feet ahead of us talking.
Tammy says she and Jason were annoyed and decided to go their separate ways.
Jason had called me at 3:30 in the morning asking me if I had heard from Tabitha or Carlos. And I said, no, I have not heard from Tabitha or Carlos.
You find out there was a period of time where Tabitha and Carlos are unaccounted for about 2.5 hours or so. Nobody knows where they are.
I did not get a phone call from Tabitha herself until 8 o'clock that morning. She told me that we're running away to Georgia.
When detectives question Jason Gaylord, his account mirrors Tammy's.
They didn't know what was going on, and so the officials could see Tammy and Jason had nothing to do with this at all.
Authorities redouble their efforts to locate Tabitha Messina and Carlos Christopher and put out a nationwide APB for the couple.
So now we have issued warrants for Tabitha and Carlos, and those are armed and dangerous warrants.
Just 16 hours after detectives issued a BOLO for the fugitives, the manager of a motel in Avery County, North Carolina, spots an unauthorized car in his parking lot.
He sees trash outside the car. Goes up, there's 2 people asleep in the car. He calls the police, the sheriff shows up, walks up to the car, takes a look, runs the plate through the radio, gets the hit, and I can only imagine what went through his mind at that point as he said, get me some help.
Within minutes, a team of heavily armed officers arrive on the scene and order the occupants out of the vehicle.
As soon as I opened the car door, There was lasers everywhere. I was scared. I remember them telling me to turn the car off. And every time I would go to reach for the car, they would tell me to stop moving. They came up. They had guns pointed. They cuffed me in the front. Carlos, they cuffed him in the back, and they put this wire around his wrists. They didn't ask no questions. They said that the car was in an unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, and that's all they would tell me.
Later that day, detectives arrived to transport Tabitha and Carlos back to Ohio.
My story was that I didn't know what happened, and I kept my mouth shut, didn't say nothing. I didn't have nobody to turn to. I went through it by myself.
Carlos Christopher is more cooperative when detectives sit down with him for a formal interview. He tells them that after the altercation with Richard Messina on July 28th, Tabitha made a pass at him.
Tabitha and Jason begin having sex on the playground. Tammy and Carlos are making out a short distance away.
Carlos would tell us that as Tabitha would be having sex with Jason, she would be looking at him as if to entice him toward her. He knew he should start telling us the truth. And when he did that, you could almost see a weight being lifted off of his shoulders.
Finally, we're going to find out who did this and what happened.
South Euclid detectives are interviewing Carlos Christopher, who claims that earlier in the night of the murders of Richard Messina and Sandra Cover, Tabitha Messina had revealed a dark secret about her father.
She begins to tell Carlos about what a horrible childhood she had, how she was raped repeatedly by Richard, how he had beat her.
Carlos was so far from the truth. There was never any sexual abuse in my household. My father would have cut his own arms off before he ever did anything like that. So that's I don't even know where that came from.
Carlos tells detectives that he and Tabitha made a plan to break into her father's house.
Carlos is telling us the whole intent of going into that house was to just scare Richard and tell him not to try and find Tabitha.
They entered the house through the garage. He got an axe out of the garage, and Tabitha got a hatchet and a crowbar. He says that they started to go upstairs towards the bedroom. For whatever reason, Tabitha put the hatchet down on her bed. They went into the bedroom. He stood over Richard. Tabitha stood over Sandra. And just about the time that Carlos was going to wake Richard up, he looks over and sees Tabitha wailing on Sandy with the crowbar. Carlos says his mind froze. And at that time, he hit Richard with the axe. After he hit him the second time, he knew he was dead. At this point in time, Tabitha is still hitting Sandra with the crowbar. But now she's on the ground. Tabitha says to him, "Carlos, kill this bitch."
And that's when he stood over her and hit her in the back of the head with the axe. And that's what ultimately killed her. Carlos was 19. I don't get it. I'm not going to say he was totally repentant and remorseful. He knew what he did. He knew it was wrong, but he thinks he did it for the right reasons because he still believed at that point that Tabitha was being molested by her dad. And he was honest, brutally honest. And that poor kid, he was so manipulated by Tabitha.
Carlos was more of the the tough one. This wouldn't have happened if I wouldn't have brought him to the house. And I'm 100% guilty of that. Yeah. What I'm saying is, I might not have did the murder, but I was definitely guilty for what happened. My friend choices were horrible when I was young. And our parents always tell us, like, you know, choose your friends wisely. And it never registered. And I liked the excitement. And that's what I was attracted to.
Following his confession, authorities charge both Carlos Christopher and Tabitha Messina with 2 counts of aggravated murder.
There were additional felonies that were committed, and the level of cruelty that went into this type of killing and how it was perpetrated would definitely make this a death penalty eligible case.
Most of us wanted the death penalty. I know I wanted the death penalty. An eye for an eye.
With both suspects in custody, authorities begin preparing for their trials.
Carlos told us where they threw the axe and the crowbar, and it was in a field behind a convenience store, and we went out there with the canine and searched that whole field, but we never did find the weapons.
Detectives receive the concrete evidence they need from forensic testing.
A couple shirts and a knife and a fedora hat that were found in the shrubs just outside of the house. Those shirts were collected and submitted for testing. Those shirts contained the DNA of both Tabitha and Carlos, respectively, along with the blood of Sandra Cover.
Despite Tabitha's unwillingness to cooperate, detectives believe she orchestrated the crime.
In some respects, she wasn't lying. Carlos did the actual killing. But what was her role? She set the whole thing up. She put everything in motion. She put everything into play.
This volatile relationship led to poor choices, a heartbreaking betrayal, and she couldn't even face the consequences.
I just felt like my whole world come crashing down.
In May 2008, 9 months after the murders of Richard Messina and Sandra Cover, Carlos Christopher is convicted of aggravated murder.
The 3-judge panel decided he would get 2 consecutive life terms in prison.
When the sentence came down, I was ecstatic because he will not have the opportunity for parole ever.
Just days before Tabitha's trial is set to begin in September of 2008, Tabitha and her attorneys meet with the prosecution.
The prosecutors took the death penalty off the table to avoid putting the families through the trial. So Tabitha took her plea deal.
They gave me 65 years to life. And I was dumbfounded. Like, I've never been in trouble before. And you guys didn't even give me a chance to speak, nothing. I haven't even had an opportunity to even have a chance at life right now. My life got taken from me at a young age.
I think the sentence was ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous. They proved that my daughter killed nobody. She was there, but like she said, she was scared of Carlos. She thought he was going to kill her too. And I think the judges were unfair to my daughter.
The court system knew my family. And when I went in there, the judge has dealt with my parents before. They dealt with my mom. They dealt with my dad. Didn't know it. Didn't defend myself. Couldn't defend myself. I never got a chance to really speak. I would say to Sandy's family that I am so sorry, that she was a good woman and she did not deserve what was happening. And then to my dad's family, you know how hard he was, but I would have never wanted him hurt. Not like this. I never wanted nothing like this to happen to him. And I live with it every day. I still can't look at her pictures till this day. I just started able to look at my dad's. And it hurts. Very much so, it hurts.
I do not believe Tabitha has any remorse. I do not. And if she expresses it, I take it with a grain of salt.
I've been locked up for 18 years, and it has been a challenge. It's been very hard. I was in a really dark place. I'm missing my family. I'm missing my mom.
I've always told her, Tabby, you can't bring those years back, baby. You just have to keep moving forward. And I've even told her a million times, she's not the one that should be locked up. It should have been me and him.
I still, to this day, don't know why she did it. I just see a dad who provided a home for his daughter. Maybe not the best home life, but I don't see how that plays into her killing him. She had her whole life in front of her to do whatever she wanted to. She chose poorly.
I just hope to one day, be able to walk out of here, and leave this behind. Never forget, but to try and maybe start a life, have a second chance.
I still remember the sentence that older residents whispered long after the newspaper ink had faded, long after witnesses moved away, long after investigators retired, and evidence boxes gathered dust in forgotten storage rooms. They said some cold cases die quietly. Others refuse to die at all. They linger in the landscape, in family photographs, in roadside diners, in late-night conversations that begin with ordinary memories and end with a question nobody has ever answered. The summer of 1985 left one such question hanging over a small California community, and 40 years later, the silence surrounding it remains louder than any confession. The last confirmed sighting of Elaine Mercer should have meant absolutely nothing. That is what makes it terrifying. No screaming. No visible struggle. No frantic phone call. No witness running toward deputies with urgent news. Just a woman leaving work on a warm Thursday evening, carrying a handbag, a paperback novel, and every expectation that she would be home before dark. 32 years old. Reliable. Organized. Predictable in the best possible way. The kind of person whose absence announced itself immediately because routine was the foundation of her entire life. Elaine worked at a modest accounting office on the edge of town. Her co-workers described her with almost identical language. Responsible, quiet, kind, methodical. She paid bills early, remembered birthdays, returned borrowed items in better condition than she received them. She had no known enemies, no dangerous habits, no appetite for sudden adventure. People like Elaine do not simply vanish. At least that is what everyone believed. At 6:12 in the evening, she locked a filing cabinet. At 6:15, she wished two co-workers good night. At 6:17, she stepped into the parking lot beneath a fading orange sky. That moment would become historic for all the wrong reasons. Because after that, certainty begins to collapse. The drive home should have taken less than half an hour. The route was familiar enough to complete with eyes closed. A sequence of country roads, small intersections, and long stretches of open California landscape where everyone recognized everyone else. She had driven that route hundreds of times. Yet somewhere between habit and home, something changed forever. When Elaine failed to appear at work the following morning, concern arrived slowly. This was 1985. Missing a call did not immediately trigger panic. People assumed delays, unexpected visits, personal errands. Life possessed a different rhythm before digital connection transformed absence into an instant alarm. By noon, concern hardened into fear. Her supervisor called repeatedly. No answer. Her sister Margaret drove to the house. No answer there either. The mailbox remained untouched. Curtains stayed exactly as Elaine always left them. The morning newspaper rested on the front steps. Inside, investigators encountered a scene so ordinary it became deeply unsettling. Nothing was disturbed. The bed remained perfectly made. Clothes hung neatly in closets. Unopened groceries sat in the refrigerator. A handwritten reminder about Sunday's family dinner remained attached to the kitchen calendar. There was no packed luggage, no missing personal records, no indication of preparation. If Elaine intended to leave voluntarily, she had abandoned every single habit that defined her entire existence. Sheriff deputies recognized the contradiction immediately. People disappear. People run away. People start new lives. But they rarely do so without carrying the essentials of that new life with them. Elaine Mercer appeared to have vanished in the middle of continuing exactly as before. The search began within hours. Volunteers arrived from neighboring communities. Horseback riders examined ranch land. Helicopters surveyed dry hillsides. Teenagers carried flashlights through wooded trails. Local businesses donated food and water. The entire region mobilized around a single assumption: find Elaine alive. Bring her home. That optimism lasted precisely 3 days. Because on the 4th day, the case transformed from a missing person investigation into something infinitely darker. A highway maintenance worker discovered her vehicle. The location made no sense. Even now, investigators studying the file struggle to explain it. The pale blue sedan sat near an abandoned logging road nearly 60 miles from her intended route home. The area attracted almost no traffic. Locals avoided it after sunset. Visitors rarely knew it existed. Yet there the car remained, parked carefully, undamaged, silent, waiting. The first officers on scene experienced an immediate and overwhelming sense that something was fundamentally wrong. Not chaotic wrong. Not violent wrong. Calculated wrong. The driver's door was locked. The windows remained intact. Inside the vehicle, Elaine's purse rested on the passenger seat. Cash remained untouched. Identification remained untouched. Credit cards remained untouched. Nothing suggested robbery. Nothing suggested haste. Nothing suggested panic. A paperback mystery novel lay beside the purse. The bookmark remained inserted exactly halfway through the story. A coffee cup occupied the center console. Lipstick marks still visible. Ordinary objects. Ordinary moments. Frozen in time. But the keys were missing. That detail would haunt investigators for decades. Someone had removed them. Elaine. Or someone else. The distinction meant everything. Crime scene technicians processed the car with every method available in 1985. Fingerprints, fiber analysis, tire impressions, photographic documentation, measurements from every conceivable angle. Results arrived weeks later. Nothing useful, nothing definitive, nothing capable of explaining how a dependable woman ended up 60 miles off course without leaving behind a single clear answer. The newspapers moved quickly. Headlines appeared across regional publications. California woman vanishes without trace. Mysterious disappearance shocks community. 1985 cold case in the making? The phrase felt dramatic at first. Nobody imagined how accurate it would become. Detective Daniel Reeves took primary responsibility for the investigation. 30 years in law enforcement had given him a reputation built upon patience rather than spectacle. He believed every person carried patterns, and every crime represented a disruption of those patterns. Understand the routine. Understand the person. Find the truth. That philosophy had solved difficult cases before. Elaine Mercer challenged every element of it, because her routine offered no obvious weakness. No secret meetings. No unexplained financial activity. No dangerous acquaintances. No history of substance abuse. No recent arguments. No dramatic romantic entanglements. Friends described her life as peaceful. Investigators sometimes fear peaceful lives more than chaotic ones. Chaos leaves evidence. Peace leaves questions. Reeves interviewed coworkers repeatedly. He reconstructed Elaine's final workday minute by minute. He examined phone records. He visited businesses along her normal route home. Nobody remembered anything unusual. Nobody recalled distress. Nobody reported suspicious behavior. It was as though reality itself had edited out the crucial moment investigators desperately needed. Then came the gas station witness. And suddenly, the case changed. A teenager working evening shifts at a small station outside town claimed he remembered seeing Elaine shortly after 7 o'clock that night. She stopped for fuel, purchased coffee, appeared calm. But according to his recollection, another vehicle waited nearby. A dark pickup truck. Older model. No distinctive markings. The driver never exited. Never entered the store. Simply remained parked beneath weak fluorescent lights. Watching. The witness could not identify the man inside. Could not estimate age. Could not describe facial features. Only a silhouette. Only an impression. Only the unsettling certainty that the truck left moments after Elaine departed. Detective Reeves treated the information cautiously. Eyewitness memory is fragile, especially after public attention influences recollection. Yet something about the teenager's account felt authentic. Specific details remained consistent through repeated interviews. No embellishment. No dramatic additions. No desire for publicity. Just uncertainty mixed with conviction. A dangerous combination. Investigators searched registration records. Thousands of pickup trucks matched the broad description. The lead dissolved almost immediately. Still, the possibility remained. Someone may have followed Elaine. Someone may have known her routine. Someone may have understood exactly which roads offered isolation and which offered witnesses. That possibility transformed community anxiety into genuine fear. Because random disappearances terrify people. Planned disappearances destroy their sense of safety entirely. Residents began locking doors earlier. Parents demanded children return home before sunset. Businesses closed sooner. Strangers attracted suspicion. The disappearance of one woman altered the behavior of an entire region. Rumors emerged with astonishing speed. Some claimed Elaine possessed hidden savings and intended to start over elsewhere. Others insisted she had become involved with a secret romantic relationship. Still others whispered about organized criminal activity moving through rural California. Evidence supported none of it. But human beings hate unanswered questions. When facts disappear, imagination eagerly fills the void. Margaret Mercer rejected every theory suggesting voluntary disappearance. She knew her sister too well. Elaine called every Sunday. Without exception. Birthdays mattered. Family mattered. Promises mattered. People capable of abandoning those commitments without explanation are different people entirely. Margaret believed one thing with absolute certainty. Something happened to Elaine. Something unexpected. Something irreversible. And somewhere, someone knew exactly what that something was. Weeks turned into months. Summer surrendered to autumn. Search teams returned repeatedly to the logging road where the car had been discovered. Cadaver dogs examined surrounding terrain. Volunteers walked shoulder to shoulder through dense brush. Investigators explored abandoned structures scattered throughout the area. Nothing. No clothing. No jewelry. No remains. No sign that Elaine Mercer had ever physically occupied the place where her vehicle waited. The absence itself became evidence. Not evidence of innocence. Not evidence of guilt. Evidence of planning. Because accidental disappearances leave fragments. Deliberate actions erase them. And somebody, somewhere in Northern California, appeared to have erased an entire human being. The question that kept Daniel Reeves awake at night was brutally simple. Why there? Why abandon the vehicle 60 miles away? Why preserve cash, identification, and personal belongings? Why remove only the keys? Every answer created new contradictions. Every theory collapsed beneath its own weight. Yet one disturbing possibility refused to disappear. Perhaps the location itself meant something. Perhaps investigators were searching for a person when they should have been searching for a memory, a connection, a forgotten event rooted in that isolated stretch of land. Because cold cases often hide their truths in places that initially appear meaningless. And in 1985, deep in the California countryside, meaning seemed to vanish alongside Elaine Mercer herself.
Part 2.
I kept a copy of the original newspaper clipping for years. Not because it offered answers, but because of what it failed to say. 3 columns of black ink, a smiling photograph, a map with a circle around an abandoned logging road, and a headline that promised mystery while concealing something far more unsettling. The article described a disappearance. The town experienced an awakening. For the first time in living memory, ordinary people understood that evil did not always announce itself with violence. Sometimes it arrived quietly, slipped into routine, and left behind nothing except an absence too precise to ignore. By October of 1985, the search for Elaine Mercer had entered a dangerous phase. Hope remained alive. Certainty was dead. Detective Daniel Reeves understood the pattern. Missing person investigations survive on momentum. The first 48 hours produce urgency. The first week generates public attention. The first month determines whether witnesses remember details or begin remembering stories they wish were true. Beyond that point, time becomes an accomplice to whoever carries the secret. And someone, Reeves believed with absolute conviction, was carrying one. He returned to the accounting office where Elaine worked. Again and again. He examined the ordinary because extraordinary explanations had failed him. The filing cabinets, the coffee machine, the employee parking spaces, the conversations people considered too insignificant to mention during initial interviews. Human memory hides in routine. Sometimes the crucial fact arrives only after repetition strips away confidence. One coworker remembered Elaine mentioning an unfamiliar phone call earlier that week. Nothing alarming. No argument. No visible distress. Just curiosity. The caller had asked whether she still lived at the same address she occupied years earlier. An odd question. At the time, it meant nothing. Weeks later, it meant everything. Detectives requested telephone records. The process in 1985 was painfully slow. Paper logs, manual requests, incomplete information. The number, if it existed, could not be identified with certainty. Another door closed. Another possibility dissolved. Yet Reeves wrote a single sentence in his notebook and underlined it twice. Someone wanted to confirm where she lived. The question lingered.
Who and why?
The town answered with speculation. Speculation always arrives faster than evidence. A mechanic claimed he saw a strange truck parked near Elaine's neighborhood during previous weekends. A waitress insisted she recognized a man from out of town asking unusual questions. A retired schoolteacher believed she heard raised voices near the highway shortly after sunset on the night Elaine vanished. Every statement demanded attention. Every statement consumed resources. Most led nowhere. The sheriff's department assembled timelines that covered entire walls. Colored pins marked sightings. Red strings connected possibilities. Names appeared. Names disappeared. People who initially seemed important faded into irrelevance. Others emerged unexpectedly. None remained at the center for long. The case resisted structure. That resistance frightened experienced investigators more than outright violence. Violence speaks. Silence negotiates. Silence withholds. Silence waits. By November, reporters from larger cities had begun arriving. Television crews transformed local anxiety into statewide fascination. The phrase cold case had not yet attached itself permanently to Elaine's disappearance, but everyone sensed the direction. The window was narrowing.
The questions were multiplying.
One evening, Margaret Mercer agreed to her first televised interview. She sat beneath harsh studio lighting and delivered a statement that would echo across decades. My sister did not disappear from her life. She disappeared from someone else's decision. The sentence struck the public with remarkable force. No tears.
No teatrix.
Only certainty. Margaret believed Elaine encountered another human being that night. Someone capable of extraordinary control. Someone capable of preserving a secret indefinitely.
The community adopted that belief.
Fear changed shape. People no longer worried about random danger. They worried about familiarity, about neighbors, about regular customers, about faces seen every day without suspicion. The possibility that an ordinary person could conceal an extraordinary crime unsettled everyone. Meanwhile, Daniel Reeves pursued a different line of thought. He focused on geography. Why abandon the car near an old logging road? The location bothered him, not because it was remote. California possessed countless remote locations. Because it was specifically remote. Chosen. Intentional. The road connected to timber operations decades earlier. Most activities ceased in the 70s. A handful of hunters still passed through during certain seasons. Locals occasionally used nearby trails. Nothing more. No reason existed for Elaine Mercer to travel there voluntarily, unless she intended to meet someone. That possibility introduced another terrifying scenario. What if she recognized the person responsible? What if trust, rather than force, carried her away from safety? Investigators reviewed personal relationships, former classmates, neighbors, co-workers, brief romantic connections, family friends. The list expanded endlessly. No obvious suspect emerged. One name attracted temporary interest. Thomas Keene, an acquaintance from years earlier. They had attended community college during the same period. Nothing indicated ongoing contact. Nothing suggested hostility. But investigators learned he worked seasonal construction projects throughout Northern California, including regions near the abandoned logging area. Questions followed. Interviews followed. Suspicion followed. Evidence did not. Keene cooperated completely. Provided alibis. Passed scrutiny. Another possibility disappeared into the growing cemetery of unanswered leads. Winter approached. Rain transformed rural roads into rivers of mud. Search operations slowed. Nature reclaimed evidence, if evidence had ever existed at all. And still, the car remained the center of everything. Detectives revisited it repeatedly. The untouched cash, the purse, the novel, the missing keys. Certain details refused to fit. Robbery made no sense. Impulsive violence made little sense. A stranger attack required extraordinary coincidence. Theories collapsed one after another. Only deliberate planning remained standing. Planning implied knowledge. Knowledge implied familiarity. Familiarity implied trust. The logic formed a circle with no exit. Then came the diner witness. Months after Elaine vanished, a woman named Ruth Delgado contacted investigators with information she initially dismissed as unimportant. She worked evenings at a roadside diner approximately 40 miles from where the vehicle was discovered. Business was slow. Faces became memorable. She believed Elaine had eaten there on the night she disappeared. But Elaine had not been alone. The memory arrived with uncomfortable clarity. A man sat opposite her. Middle-aged. Dark hair. Reserved. Neither angry nor affectionate. Their conversation appeared serious. Intentional. The sort of discussion people conduct when something significant hangs in the balance. Detective Reeves nearly drove off the road receiving the call. Finally, another person, another presence, another thread connecting Elaine to the final hours of her known existence. He interviewed Ruth repeatedly. Her account remained consistent.
No dramatic embellishments. No contradictions.
She remembered the man ordering black coffee. She remembered Elaine stirring her drink without actually taking a sip. She remembered an atmosphere that felt heavy, though not openly hostile. Most importantly, she remembered both individuals leaving together. A composite sketch followed. Newspaper coverage exploded. The unknown man became the center of statewide attention. Phone lines flooded with tips. Hundreds arrived. Then thousands. Former neighbors recognized him. Travelers swore they encountered him elsewhere. Psychics offered revelations. Conspiracy theories multiplied. Reality disappeared beneath noise. No identification survived serious examination. The mystery man remained exactly that. A mystery. Years later, debate continued. Was Ruth correct? Did memory evolve under pressure? Did publicity reshape recollection? Daniel Reeves never doubted her. Instinct guided him. The same instinct that solved previous cases. Someone sat across from Elaine Mercer that evening. Someone shared a final conversation. Someone walked back into darkness, carrying knowledge unavailable to everyone else. The tragedy deepened because of its simplicity. No elaborate criminal network.
No sensational motives.
Just one unidentified human being occupying a booth in a roadside diner. One ordinary interaction transformed into permanent uncertainty. Christmas arrived. Margaret set an extra place at the family table. Not because she expected Elaine to walk through the door, because refusing to set it felt like surrender. Families of missing persons inhabit strange emotional territory. Grief without confirmation. Hope without evidence. Love without destination. The world encourages closure. Closure never comes. Neighbors avoided discussing the case during celebrations. Children sensed tension without understanding reasons. The absence itself attended every gathering. By early 1986, official optimism had weakened. Privately, investigators acknowledged harsh realities. If Elaine remained alive, extraordinary circumstances prevented contact. If she had died, someone had succeeded in concealing every meaningful trace. Neither conclusion offered comfort. Yet Daniel Reeves continued working. Morning after morning. Interview after interview. Map after map. He developed a habit during that period. Each evening before leaving the office, he stood before the case board and asked the same question aloud. What have we misunderstood? Not overlooked. Not ignored. Misunderstood. Because he believed answers sometimes exist in plain sight while investigators impose incorrect assumptions upon them. Perhaps Elaine never intended to drive home directly. Perhaps the logging road represented history rather than geography. Perhaps the unidentified man mattered less than the relationship connecting them. Perhaps every fact already existed. Only interpretation remained flawed. The theory haunted him. It would continue haunting him for decades. Outside the sheriff's department, life resumed its ordinary rhythm. Children returned to school. Businesses reopened after holidays. The news cycle moved onward. But underneath that normality, something permanent had changed. People checked locks twice. Women avoided driving alone at night. Parents memorized license plate numbers. Trust became conditional. The disappearance of one quiet accountant had altered an entire community's understanding of safety. And somewhere beyond public fear, beyond newspaper headlines, beyond exhausted investigators and grieving family members, a single truth remained hidden. Someone knew why Elaine Mercer never came home. Someone understood what happened after sunset on that warm California evening. Someone carried memories that could end the mystery immediately. Yet year after year, season after season, that silence held. Unbroken. Patient. Almost deliberate. As though the land itself had agreed to keep watch over a secret too terrible or too ordinary to reveal. The winter of 1986 settled over the valley with an uncomfortable stillness. Rain washed away tire marks that might have mattered. Mud swallowed footprints that might have changed history. Entire hillsides transformed beneath weeks of storms, and with every passing day, Detective Daniel Reeves felt something slipping further beyond reach. Not evidence. Not theory. Something worse. Momentum. Cold cases are not born in a single moment. They freeze gradually. One unanswered question at a time. One exhausted witness at a time. One season at a time. By February, the official search operations had slowed dramatically, but Reeves refused to let the investigation become another stack of forgotten folders. Every morning, before sunrise, he unlocked his office, pinned fresh maps onto the wall, and forced himself to revisit assumptions that everyone else had already accepted as truth. The greatest danger in any investigation, he believed, was certainty. Certainty blinded. Certainty simplified. Certainty created stories investigators wanted to believe. And this case punished every attempt at simplification. Because nothing about Elaine Mercer fit conventional explanations. If she ran away voluntarily, why leave behind cash, identification, family, routine, and every indication of future plans? If she encountered a random predator, why did her vehicle appear carefully abandoned 60 miles away without signs of struggle? If someone she trusted arranged a meeting, why had nobody ever discovered evidence of that relationship? Each possibility opened one door and slammed shut 3 others. Meanwhile, the community continued changing in subtle ways. Parents organized neighborhood watch groups. Gas stations installed brighter exterior lighting. Women traveling alone after dark called relatives upon arriving home. Fear had become part of ordinary life. Not loud fear. Not panic. Something quieter. Something permanent. The understanding that an invisible line existed between normality and catastrophe, and nobody knew exactly where Elaine Mercer had crossed it. Then another witness emerged. Not with certainty, with regret. A truck driver named Leonard Bishop contacted authorities after seeing renewed television coverage. Months earlier, he dismissed what he considered an insignificant memory. Now, he wasn't so sure. He had been driving south on Highway 36 the evening Elaine disappeared. Approximately 8:30. Light fading. Traffic sparse. He remembered passing a pale blue sedan parked on the shoulder near a turnout. The driver's door was closed. Another vehicle stood behind it, dark-colored. Possibly a pickup. Possibly not. The detail that disturbed him most came years later, after reflection had sharpened the memory rather than erased it. He recalled seeing 2 figures standing near the front of the sedan. One appeared to be a woman. The other remained impossible to identify.
No struggle.
No visible distress. Only conversation. Ordinary conversation. The kind of interaction nobody notices because ordinary moments do not usually become historical moments. Reeves interviewed Bishop for 6 hours. Repeated questions. Repeated timelines. Repeated descriptions. The account remained frustratingly incomplete. No license plates. No facial features. No certainty regarding the second vehicle. Yet one fact aligned with previous testimony. Elaine may not have been alone during her final known hours. The possibility gained strength. And with it came a terrifying implication. Whoever accompanied her understood exactly how to remain invisible. Not through brilliance. Not through elaborate criminal planning. Through normality. Normal people rarely attract attention. Normal conversations disappear into memory. Normal evenings pass unnoticed. Until somebody vanishes. Then every ordinary detail becomes extraordinary. The newspapers sensed renewed momentum. Headlines returned. New witness emerges in baffling California disappearance. Mystery deepens as investigators chase fresh leads. But inside the sheriff's department, optimism remained cautious. They had seen this pattern before. Attention produced memories. Memories produced possibilities. Possibilities produced disappointment. Still, Reeves followed every lead. One led him toward an abandoned sawmill several miles from where Elaine's car had been discovered. The structure stood empty. Windows shattered. Machinery rusting beneath years of neglect. Teenagers occasionally explored it. Hunters sometimes passed nearby. Locals avoided discussing it after dark. Rumors surrounded the place. Rumors always surround empty places. Investigators searched it thoroughly. Basements. Storage areas. Collapsed offices. Nothing. No evidence connecting Elaine to the property. Yet Reeves experienced a strange feeling walking through the ruins. Not fear. Recognition. The realization that countless secrets throughout history remained hidden not by extraordinary methods, but by ordinary neglect. Places disappear before people do. Communities stop looking. Memories lose sharp edges. Nature assists. Time completes the process. Perhaps somebody understood that principle perfectly. Back in town, Margaret Mercer continued her own investigation. She organized volunteer meetings, distributed updated flyers, contacted missing person organizations across California. Her determination unsettled some people, inspired others. Most families eventually accept uncertainty. Margaret rejected acceptance entirely. To her, surrender represented betrayal. Elaine deserved persistence. Elaine deserved answers. Elaine deserved to remain present in public consciousness long after newspaper editors moved on to newer tragedies. One evening, she visited Detective Reeves carrying a cardboard box. Inside rested childhood photographs, birthday cards, letters, old journals, fragments of a life stretching back decades. If somebody knew her, Margaret said quietly, the answer is probably here. Reeves spent nights reading through everything. School memories, vacation stories, routine correspondence. Nothing criminal, nothing dramatic. Yet human lives rarely announce future dangers in advance. The smallest forgotten connection can become enormously significant years later. One particular letter caught his attention. Dated 1978. Signed only with initials.
DM.
The contents appeared harmless. References to college experiences. Shared acquaintances. Plans that never materialized. But Margaret could not identify the writer. Neither could other family members. A mystery embedded inside another mystery. Investigators attempted to locate former classmates. Records proved incomplete. People moved. Names changed. Memories faded. The initials remained exactly that. Initials. Nothing more. Another thread leading into darkness. Spring arrived. Wildflowers covered hillsides once again. Life continued displaying its indifference to unresolved grief. Children played baseball. Restaurants reopened outdoor seating. Tourists passed through without recognizing the invisible weight carried by local residents. For outsiders, the region represented beautiful California countryside. For those who remembered 1985, every familiar road contained unanswered questions. Then came the anonymous phone call. Late April. Just after midnight. The sheriff's department received a male voice speaking calmly.
No panique. No habies disguise.
Only one sentence. You're looking in the wrong place because you've always been asking the wrong question. The caller disconnected immediately. No identification. No trace. Technology offered limited options. Investigators preserved the recording, listened repeatedly, analyzed accents, speech patterns, background noise. Nothing definitive emerged. Hoax? Possibly. A cruel prank? Certainly possible. But Daniel Reeves could not ignore it. The wording bothered him. Not because it revealed information, because it suggested perspective. You're asking the wrong question. What question should investigators have been asking instead? Where is Elaine? Who took Elaine? Why Elaine? Had everyone, including Reeves himself, misunderstood the fundamental nature of the case? The possibility consumed him. He filled notebooks with alternative approaches. Suppose the abandoned vehicle represented a message rather than concealment. Suppose 60 miles held symbolic importance. Suppose disappearance itself wasn't the intended outcome. Each theory sounded increasingly unreasonable. Yet reason had produced absolutely nothing. Sometimes impossible cases demand impossible thinking. Summer approached once more. Nearly a year had passed. The anniversary loomed over the community like a storm visible on the horizon. Television stations prepared retrospectives. Journalists requested interviews. Old wounds reopened. And still, no arrests. No suspects. No body. No explanation. Only a woman who left work expecting to drive home and somehow entered history instead. Margaret visited Elaine's house regularly despite nobody living there anymore. Dust gathered. Paint faded. Weeds pushed through cracks in the walkway. Yet she maintained the property with stubborn devotion. Neighbors watched quietly. They understood. Abandoning the house felt dangerously close to abandoning hope itself. One evening, standing on that silent porch, Margaret made a statement to a reporter that would haunt listeners for decades. Somewhere, she said, someone wakes up every morning knowing exactly what happened. They drink coffee. They read newspapers. They smile at neighbors. And they carry the truth as if it weighs nothing at all. The sentence spread throughout California because everyone recognized its terrible possibility. The monster people imagined might not be monstrous at all. He might be ordinary, familiar, forgettable, the kind of person who never attracts a second glance. And if that were true, then Elaine Mercer had not disappeared into wilderness or chance. She had disappeared into the oldest hiding place in human history, the quiet, comfortable anonymity of another person's secret. The first anniversary arrived without answers, and somehow that absence felt heavier than grief itself. Grief, at least, gives people rituals, funerals, headstones, final conversations. But uncertainty is a living thing. It breathes beside families. It follows them into grocery stores, holiday dinners, ordinary mornings, and sleepless nights. 1 year after Elaine Mercer vanished somewhere between a familiar workplace and a familiar home, the entire county had learned that unanswered questions do not fade. They mature. They harden. They become part of the landscape. June of 1986 brought reporters back to town. Camera crews parked outside the sheriff's office. Newspapers printed anniversary features. The same smiling photograph appeared again and again. The same impossible headline. Woman vanishes without a trace. The public wanted progress. Investigators wanted a miracle. Neither arrived. Detective Daniel Reeves stood before the evidence board that morning and experienced a feeling he had never admitted aloud.
Fear.
Not fear of failure. Fear of permanence. Because cold cases possess a terrible gravity. Once they settle into institutional memory, they resist movement. Witnesses grow older. Records disappear. Businesses close. Roads change. Entire lives unfold while one terrible moment remains completely frozen in time. He refused to let that happen. Not yet. Reeves ordered a complete reconstruction of Elaine's final confirmed day. No assumptions. No shortcuts. Every minute. Every conversation. Every receipt. Every movement. He wanted to remove the mythology already forming around the case and return to facts. Facts, unlike stories, could still be interrogated. The reconstruction began at sunrise. Coworkers described ordinary routines. Coffee at 9. Paperwork until noon. Lunch with colleagues. Telephone calls. Nothing unusual. Nothing memorable. The problem with ordinary days is that nobody pays attention to them until they become historic. Human beings document celebrations. They remember disasters. Routine slips away unnoticed. Yet somewhere inside that routine, Reeves believed, a hidden deviation existed. Something small. Something dismissed. Something crucial. A receptionist suddenly remembered an apparently insignificant detail. 2 days before disappearing, Elaine had received flowers. No card. No name. Just a modest arrangement delivered to the office. At the time, everyone assumed they came from a friend. Elaine herself seemed puzzled. Pleased, perhaps, but puzzled. She reportedly laughed and said, "I guess somebody remembers me better than I remember them." The remark now sounded chilling. Investigators tracked the florist. Records proved incomplete. Cash purchase. Male customer. Middle-aged.
Baseball cap.
No memorable features. California contained millions of men fitting that description. Another lead dissolved. Still, Reeves wrote a single word across the top of his notebook. Recognition. Whoever sent those flowers wanted Elaine to recognize a connection. Or perhaps wanted to test whether she still would. The thought lingered. What if her disappearance began days before she vanished? What if somebody had been reintroducing themselves into her life carefully, methodically, patiently? Predators rarely appear from nowhere. Sometimes they return. Sometimes they wait. Sometimes they rely upon memory itself as a weapon. Meanwhile, public fascination intensified. True crime columns picked up the story. Radio programs debated theories. Callers offered opinions with extraordinary confidence despite possessing almost no facts. One theory claimed Elaine had uncovered financial corruption through her accounting work. Another suggested an old relationship had resurfaced. Some insisted organized criminal groups operated along remote transportation corridors. Evidence supported none of it. But mysteries create vacuums. And vacuums invite imagination. Margaret Mercer hated every rumor. Each one transformed her sister into an abstraction. Elaine was becoming a story instead of a person. That terrified her. Because stories entertain. People endure. She organized a community vigil on the anniversary evening. Hundreds attended. Candles illuminated the park. Children who barely knew Elaine stood beside elderly neighbors who remembered her as a teenager. The entire gathering carried an uncomfortable truth. Nobody came to celebrate closure. They came to resist forgetting. Margaret spoke briefly.
No anger. No dramatic appeals.
Just a simple statement that silenced the crowd. My sister lived an ordinary life. If this can happen to her, it can happen to anyone. Remember her, because remembering is the only thing standing between truth and disappearance. Detective Reeves attended quietly from the back. Watching. Listening. Thinking. One sentence from Margaret refused to leave his mind. Truth and disappearance. Perhaps the investigation focused too heavily on finding evidence of a crime and not enough on understanding disappearance itself. What if Elaine had been intentionally erased? Not physically, socially, psychologically, removed from every pattern investigators expected. The idea sounded abstract, yet every practical explanation had failed. That night, Reeves returned to the abandoned logging road alone.
No deputies.
No search teams. Just a flashlight and years of professional instinct. Darkness transformed the landscape entirely. Distances felt different. Sounds carried strangely. Isolation became almost overwhelming. He parked near the location where Elaine's vehicle had been discovered and simply listened. Whined through dry grass. Branches moving overhead. Nothing else. No answers.
No revelations.
But standing there, he recognized something deeply unsettling. The location was not random. Random places feel accidental. This place felt chosen. Someone knew it. Someone trusted it. Someone believed nobody would ask why this specific road mattered. Reeves walked nearly a mile into the surrounding woods. Old tire tracks had vanished long ago. Rain erased history with remarkable efficiency. Still, fragments remained. Rusting equipment. Collapsed fencing. Evidence of human presence stretching back decades. And then he found something curious. Not evidence. Not officially. Just curiosity. An old signpost, mostly destroyed by time. Barely readable. One surviving line of faded lettering remained visible beneath layers of dirt. Mercer Timber Access Road.
He stopped.
Read it again. Mercer. The same surname. Coincidence? Almost certainly. California contained countless Mercers. Businesses. Families. Historical references. Yet coincidence possesses strange power inside unresolved investigations. It forces questions. Reeves spent weeks researching local land records. The timber company had operated generations earlier. No direct connection to Elaine's family emerged. Different lineage.
Different history.
Nothing substantial. Still, the discovery reinforced his growing conviction. The road meant something to someone. People rarely choose locations without emotional or practical significance. The challenge involved determining whose significance mattered. Summer heat returned. The case entered its second year. Official resources declined. New investigations demanded attention. Administrators measured priorities differently from grieving families. Reality imposed limits. Reeves understood. He hated it anyway. Cold cases do not stop existing simply because budgets shift elsewhere. Secrets remain active. Memories remain active. Whoever knew the truth continued waking each morning carrying knowledge unavailable to everyone else. That thought enraged him. Somewhere, perhaps within driving distance, somebody lived comfortably beside a mystery destroying another family. One afternoon, a former classmate contacted Margaret. The conversation changed very little factually. Emotionally, it changed everything. The classmate remembered Elaine mentioning someone from her college years several months before disappearing. Not a romantic partner, not a close friend, just someone who had unexpectedly reached out after years without contact. Margaret immediately thought of the mysterious initials discovered in old letters.
DM.
The unknown connection resurfaced. Investigators renewed efforts. Old yearbooks emerged. Alumni records. Photographs. Telephone directories. An exhausting reconstruction of lives scattered across decades. Dozens of possibilities.
No certainty.
Yet the pattern felt increasingly important. Flowers without identification. An unexplained phone call. A possible reconnection from the past. An unidentified man in a diner. The pieces refused to fit neatly, but they seemed to belong to the same puzzle. Someone may have returned to Elaine's life after years of absence. Someone familiar enough to earn trust. Someone patient enough to approach gradually. If true, the implications were horrifying. Because trust eliminates the need for force. People willingly enter danger when danger wears a familiar face. By autumn, the newspapers used new language. California cold case enters second year. The phrase settled heavily across the community. Cold case. 2 simple words. 2 devastating words. They implied distance, stagnation, failure. But Daniel Reeves rejected the label privately. A case was only truly cold when everybody stopped asking questions. And he had no intention of stopping. Not while Margaret continued placing flowers beside her sister's photograph. Not while anonymous callers offered cryptic messages. Not while witnesses remembered fragments buried beneath time. Not while one impossible truth remained undeniable. Elaine Mercer existed. She lived. She planned for tomorrow. Then, within the span of an ordinary evening, she vanished so completely that decades later, investigators still argued about the most basic question imaginable. Where did the last normal moment end? And where did the nightmare begin? Somebody knew. Somebody had always known. And somewhere beyond fading memories, abandoned roads, and weathered newspaper clippings, that knowledge remained intact, waiting with the same patience that defines every great unsolved mystery. The second autumn after Elaine Mercer disappeared brought with it an unsettling transformation. The fear that had once gripped the community with sharp intensity no longer announced itself openly. It had evolved into habit. Doors were locked automatically. Parents memorized schedules with military precision. Strangers received longer looks and shorter conversations. Life continued, but trust no longer moved freely. It traveled with caution. And somewhere beneath that quiet adjustment to a new reality, Detective Daniel Reeves became convinced that the investigation had been looking in the wrong direction. Not entirely wrong, just incomplete. For nearly 2 years, every theory revolved around a single assumption. What happened after Elaine left work? Reeves began asking a different question. What started before she ever walked into that office on her final day? The distinction mattered. Murders are often spontaneous. Disappearances rarely are. Especially disappearances this clean. Especially disappearances that leave no body, no weapon, no confession, and no identifiable suspect.
Someone had planned something.
Maybe not the outcome. Maybe not the crime itself. But certainly the encounter. That belief hardened into certainty. He reopened every record from the previous 6 months of Elaine's life. Bank statements, telephone logs, employment documents, library memberships, church attendance, volunteer activities. Everything. The work consumed entire weeks. Boxes accumulated across his office floor. Most investigators searching through ordinary lives encounter overwhelming monotony. Reeves expected monotony. Instead, he discovered absence. And absence, in criminal investigations, is often more revealing than presence. Elaine kept calendars. Detailed calendars. Birthdays. Appointments. Shopping reminders. family visits. Yet portions of early 1985 contained unexplained gaps. Entire evenings marked only with a single letter.
M.
Nothing more. No surname. No description. No explanation. Margaret had never noticed it before. Coworkers couldn't identify it. Friends offered speculation but no answers.
M.
One character. One possible connection to a mystery already filled with missing pieces. The unknown initials from the college letter.
DM.
The unexplained flowers. The anonymous phone call. A man at a roadside diner. Suddenly, coincidence felt increasingly expensive. Investigators dislike coincidence. Coincidence becomes a convenient explanation when understanding fails. Reeves preferred patterns.
Pattern impli d'intention.
And intention implied humanity. Someone with motives. Someone with memory. Someone who had occupied space within Elaine's life long before the public learned her name. He tracked down former classmates scattered throughout California. The process resembled archaeology.
People married.
Changed names. Moved across states. Forgot old acquaintances. Yet eventually, one conversation altered the entire emotional landscape of the case. A woman named Linda Carver remembered a man. Not clearly. Not dramatically. Simply enough to make Reeves uncomfortable. His name might have been David. Or Daniel. She couldn't remember. But she remembered his behavior. Quiet. Intense. Deeply interested in Elaine. More interested, perhaps, than Elaine was in him. Nothing threatening. Nothing criminal. Just persistent admiration that seemed to linger long after graduation. The details remained frustratingly incomplete. No last name. No photographs. No confirmed identity. Only a memory preserved across nearly a decade. Still, Reeves wrote another sentence in his notebook. Some people never leave the past. The possibility unsettled him. What if someone had carried affection, resentment, obsession, or regret for years? What if 1985 represented not the beginning of a story, but its final chapter? The community, meanwhile, continued constructing legends around the disappearance. Teenagers told ghost stories about the logging road. Campers avoided certain areas after dark. Local radio hosts revisited theories every anniversary. Reality gradually surrendered ground to mythology. Margaret hated that development. She feared Elaine was becoming folklore, an unsolved puzzle rather than a human being. So she fought back. She organized scholarship funds, community events, missing person awareness campaigns. Every action served one purpose: keep Elaine present, keep her real, keep people from allowing mystery to replace memory. One evening, during a fundraising dinner, an elderly resident approached Margaret quietly. He hesitated before speaking. His hands trembled. Not from fear, from age. He believed he recognized Elaine's photograph. Not from 1985. From years earlier. He claimed to have seen her walking near the old Mercer timber property during college summers with a small group of friends. The statement seemed insignificant. Yet the name struck like lightning. Mercer Timber. The same decaying sign Reeves discovered near the abandoned road. Coincidence again. Always coincidence. Until coincidence appears too often. Land records received renewed scrutiny. Historical archives emerged from county storage. The Mercer Timber Company had closed decades earlier after financial troubles. No direct family connection to Elaine existed. That remained true. But something unexpected surfaced. The property had occasionally hosted environmental volunteer programs during the late 70s. College students participated in restoration efforts, community projects, outdoor activities. Attendance records were incomplete, painfully incomplete. Yet Elaine attended college during precisely that period. A possibility materialized. Had she visited those woods years before? Had someone else visited with her? Did the abandoned road represent familiarity rather than randomness? Questions multiplied faster than evidence. Still, for the first time in months, Reeves sensed movement. Not answers. Movement. The difference mattered. Winter approached again. Rain returned. Another year threatened to disappear into unresolved silence. Then the sheriff's office received an unexpected package. No return address. No accompanying note. Inside rested a single photograph. Faded. Old. Taken sometime in the late 70s. A group of college volunteers stood near a wooden sign welcoming visitors to a conservation project. The image quality was poor. Faces blurred. Yet Margaret identified Elaine immediately.
Young. Smiling. Alive.
Standing among strangers whose identities had vanished into time. Detectives enlarged the photograph repeatedly. One figure near the edge attracted attention. A man partially obscured by shadows.
Tall.
Dark-haired. Looking not toward the camera, but toward Elaine herself. The image proved almost useless as evidence. Almost. Because obsession sometimes reveals itself in the smallest details. Most people facing a photographer looked directly ahead. He did not. He looked at her. The anonymous sender never emerged. Investigators appealed publicly. No response. Another mystery layered itself upon existing mysteries. Who possessed the photograph? Why send it now? Why remain silent? The timing felt intentional. As though somebody watched the investigation from a distance. As though somebody wanted detectives moving in a particular direction without stepping into the light themselves. Daniel Reeves considered a possibility he despised. What if the anonymous caller and the anonymous sender were the same person? What if someone close to the truth lacked courage to reveal everything? Guilt behaves strangely across time. People rarely confess immediately. Conscience erodes slowly. Secrets become heavier with age. Fragments leak out. Hints appear. Partial truths surface. Not enough to solve anything. Only enough to torment investigators further. The pattern fit. And if the pattern fit, someone remained alive carrying first-hand knowledge of Elaine Mercer's final days. That realization transformed the case entirely. No longer a mystery buried exclusively in the past. A living mystery. An act of silence. A choice renewed every morning by somebody somewhere. Margaret sensed it too. During interviews, her language changed. She no longer spoke about finding evidence. She spoke about reaching a person. Appealing to memory. Appealing to decency. Appealing to whatever remained human inside the individual protecting the truth. Because after 2 years, one reality appeared undeniable. Accidents reveal themselves. Nature returns what it takes. Chance leaves fragments. This case left nothing. Nothing except deliberate absence. And deliberate absence requires deliberate action. Late one evening, Reeves sat alone reviewing the faded volunteer photograph under harsh fluorescent lights. He studied faces, postures, distances between people, ordinary human interactions captured decades earlier. Then he noticed something impossible to ignore. Elaine stood smiling with several classmates. Yet the dark-haired man near the edge maintained unusual separation from everyone else. Close enough to belong. Far enough to remain apart. Watching. Observing. Present without truly participating. The image disturbed him in ways he struggled to articulate. Because some people spend entire lives standing at the edge of other people's happiness. Watching. Waiting. Remembering. And occasionally, under circumstances nobody fully understands, stepping across a line that can never be uncrossed. Outside, rain tapped softly against office windows. Another California winter settled over the land. The abandoned logging road disappeared beneath mud once more. The old timber property remained silent. Margaret prepared for another Christmas without her sister. And somewhere beyond public attention, beyond newspaper headlines, beyond aging evidence and fading memories, a single individual may have looked at that same storm and remembered precisely what happened on the night Elaine Mercer never came home. Not wondering, not theorizing, remembering, keeping one final, terrible truth locked safely inside a life that otherwise appeared completely ordinary.
Part 7.
The third year began with an uncomfortable realization that nobody inside the sheriff's department wanted to acknowledge aloud. The investigation was no longer fighting a suspect. It was fighting time itself. Time erased. Time softened. Time persuaded witnesses that uncertainty was memory. And memory, unlike physical evidence, changed shape every time somebody touched it. By early 1988, Elaine Mercer had been missing long enough for children to ask questions their parents struggled to answer. Who was she? What happened to her? Why was her photograph still hanging inside grocery stores and post offices? Adults offered different explanations, but all of them eventually arrived at the same destination. Nobody knew. That ignorance had become part of local identity. The county possessed mountains, rivers, orchards, and one terrible mystery. Daniel Reeves hated that thought. Cases should end. Justice demanded endings. Even painful endings offered structure. But unresolved disappearances created something more dangerous than grief. They created possibility. Every person carried their own version of events. Every conversation generated new theories. The truth fractured into thousands of competing narratives. And somewhere among those narratives, the real story remained hidden. The photograph discovered by hunters continued haunting the investigation. The unidentified man beside Elaine appeared young. College age. Relaxed. Comfortable. The expression on his face suggested familiarity rather than coincidence. Whoever he was, he belonged in that moment. Yet nobody could identify him. Former classmates argued. Some insisted they recognized him. Others disagreed completely. Names emerged. Names collapsed. One week investigators pursued a former debate team member. The following week they eliminated him entirely. Nothing held. Nothing survived scrutiny. Reeves pinned an enlarged copy of the photograph above his desk. He stared at it every morning. People often reveal truths unintentionally through body language. Distance.
Posture.
Direction of attention. The man stood slightly closer to Elaine than everyone else in the image. Not dramatically. Just enough to matter. The kind of closeness that develops through familiarity. Or affection. Or history. The possibilities multiplied. Meanwhile, Margaret Mercer refused to let public attention disappear. She organized annual gatherings, spoke with reporters, maintained contact with advocacy groups focused on missing persons. Some local residents admired her determination. Others quietly avoided discussing the case altogether. Not from cruelty, from exhaustion. Living beside an unanswered question for years changes people. They begin protecting themselves from hope. Hope can become painful when repeatedly disappointed. Margaret understood. She rejected the instinct anyway. For her, forgetting represented a second disappearance. And she would not permit it. Then came the letter. No return address. No fingerprints of value. Postmarked from Sacramento. Delivered during the spring. Inside rested a single sheet of paper containing one sentence. She trusted the wrong memory. Nothing more. No explanation.
No signature.
No demand. Investigators immediately treated it as potentially significant. The wording felt personal. Intimate. Not the language of random pranksters seeking publicity. What wrong memory? A memory from childhood? College? A relationship? Something connected to the mysterious initials DM? The possibilities proved endless. Daniel Reeves placed the anonymous letter beside the recording transcript from the midnight phone call. 2 separate communications. 2 separate years. Yet both carried the same unsettling quality. They suggested misunderstanding. Not ignorance. Not concealment. Misunderstanding. As though investigators possessed every necessary fact but interpreted them incorrectly. That thought began consuming him. What if Elaine herself held the key? What if understanding her decisions mattered more than understanding potential suspects? He reopened old journals recovered from her house. Read them again. Then again. Most entries reflected ordinary life. Family concerns. Work frustrations. Books she wanted to read. Places she hoped to visit. Nothing dramatic. Nothing dangerous. Yet ordinary people often record extraordinary clues without realizing it. One passage from late 1984 attracted his attention. A brief note. Only 2 lines. Funny how certain people return exactly when you stop expecting them. Some doors should probably remain closed. No names. No context. No explanation. Reeves underlined the sentence repeatedly. People return.
Flowers arrivent.
Mysterious phone calls occur. An unidentified man appears. The pattern strengthened. Someone from Elaine's past may have re-entered her life months before she vanished. Someone she recognized. Someone she perhaps regretted recognizing. The theory felt increasingly plausible. It also felt terrifying, because trust creates vulnerability more effectively than force ever could. Summer heat settled over California once again. 3 years. 3 entire years without answers. Television stations produced anniversary segments featuring aging photographs and familiar questions. The public responded with renewed interest.
Tips arrived.
Most were useless. One was different. A retired motel owner contacted authorities after recognizing Elaine's face during a news broadcast. He remembered a woman resembling her checking into a roadside motel approximately 1 week before her disappearance. She had not been alone. A man accompanied her. Middle-aged.
Quiet.
Paid cash. Requested a room at the far end of the property. The description matched absolutely thousands of men across California. Yet the timing mattered. The motel lay less than 30 miles from the logging road. Detectives investigated immediately. Records no longer existed. The motel changed ownership. Employees moved away. Memories faded. Still, the owner remained adamant. He believed the woman was Elaine. The certainty in his voice unsettled investigators. Could Elaine have been meeting someone secretly? Could she have maintained contact with an individual unknown to friends and family? Margaret rejected the notion completely. Not out of denial. Out of conviction. Her sister valued honesty, routine, transparency. Yet Daniel Reeves understood an uncomfortable truth. Human beings contain private chapters, even those closest to them never fully read. Everyone possesses memories they rarely discuss, regrets they revisit alone, connections that survive long after they supposedly disappear. Perhaps Elaine carried one of those connections. Perhaps somebody else carried it too. The investigation drifted toward former college acquaintances once more. Old yearbooks surfaced. Student newspapers. Archived event photographs. Detectives created timelines reaching back a decade. The process felt desperate. Because it was. When the present refuses to cooperate, investigators interrogate the past. Sometimes the past answers. Most times it remains silent. One evening, Reeves visited the abandoned logging road again. He had lost count of how many times he returned. The place exerted strange influence over him. Not mystical. Psychological. A puzzle demanding resolution. Standing beside the exact location where Elaine's vehicle had been discovered, he asked himself a question he had avoided for years. What if the car wasn't abandoned there to hide something? What if it was left there to communicate something? The possibility changed perspective entirely. Messages require recipients. Symbols require understanding. Perhaps the location meant nothing to investigators because investigators were never intended to understand it. Perhaps the message targeted somebody else entirely. Somebody connected to Elaine. Somebody connected to local history. Somebody who never came forward. The idea offered no evidence. Only intuition. Yet intuition had guided Reeves throughout his career. Ignoring it felt impossible. Autumn arrived with dry winds and early darkness. The case officially entered its 4th year. New detectives joined the department. Young officers studied Elaine Mercer's file as though examining history rather than active investigation. That realization hurt more than Reeves expected. History belonged in museums. Elaine deserved better. Margaret continued placing flowers beside her sister's photograph every month. The routine never changed. Neighbors noticed. Children who once asked questions had become teenagers. Some now helped organize awareness events. The mystery passed from one generation to another. An inheritance nobody wanted. And still, somewhere beyond public grief and institutional frustration, one undeniable fact remained. A human being possessed the truth. Not fragments. Not theories. Truth. Complete and intact. A person had witnessed, participated in, or understood whatever happened after Elaine Mercer left work that summer evening. That person aged alongside everyone else. Celebrated birthdays. Read newspapers discussing the case. Watched investigators struggle. Watched a family endure decades of uncertainty. And remained silent. The silence itself had become an act, not absence.
Choice.
A deliberate decision repeated every single day. Daniel Reeves understood that reality with painful clarity. The greatest mystery was no longer simply what happened. The greatest mystery was how someone could carry an answer for so long while an entire community continued waiting in darkness. The summer of 1988 arrived with a strange kind of exhaustion. Not the exhaustion of investigators working impossible hours. Not the exhaustion of grieving families enduring another anniversary. Something deeper. The exhaustion that settles over a community after years of asking the same questions and receiving nothing in return. People still cared. That was never in doubt. But caring and believing are different things. Belief requires movement. A new witness. A new piece of evidence. A mistake made by someone who thought time had protected them. The Elaine Mercer investigation had produced none of those things. Only silence. And silence, when stretched across years, begins to resemble permanence. Daniel Reeves refused to accept permanence. He had seen impossible cases crack open before. A forgotten receipt. A jealous remark. A witness suddenly remembering what once seemed meaningless. Human beings carried secrets poorly. Eventually, somebody always slipped. The problem was determining whether the person holding Elaine's secret was still close enough to slip at all. One August morning, Reeves received a call from an archivist at a small college library. The voice on the other end sounded uncertain. Apologetic. The kind of tone people use when they suspect they might be wasting a detective's time. While organizing old student publications, the archivist had discovered photographs from a campus volunteer event in 1978. One image contained Elaine Mercer. That alone meant nothing. What mattered was who stood beside her. The same unidentified man from the photograph found in the metal box. There was no doubt. The angle differed. The clothing differed. The years had not changed the unmistakable structure of the face. For the first time, investigators possessed confirmation that the mysterious figure was not a coincidence. He belonged to Elaine's past. And apparently, he belonged there repeatedly. The department erupted with cautious optimism. 2 photographs meant a pattern. Patterns meant relationships. Relationships meant names. Or so everyone hoped. The back of the image contained handwritten notes listing participants in the volunteer program. 23 names. One of them had been crossed out with dark ink. The name beneath the mark was almost impossible to read. Almost. Detectives spent hours examining enlarged copies. Letter by letter. Stroke by stroke. The possibilities narrowed. David Martin. Daniel Murray. Derek Malone. Every interpretation produced another dead end. The ink concealed the truth just enough to deny certainty. Reeves stared at the photograph late into the evening. Who crosses out a name in an old campus picture?
Why? Accident?
Personal grievance? A meaningless act performed years before anybody disappeared? Or something deliberate? The crossed-out name became an obsession. Meanwhile, Margaret Mercer experienced a different battle.
Time.
Not investigative time. Human time. Friends encouraged her to move forward. Relatives gently suggested accepting uncertainty. Some believed hope itself had become a burden. Margaret disagreed. Hope was heavy, but surrender weighed more. She still visited Elaine's empty house. Still maintained the garden. Still opened windows during summer afternoons so the place would not feel abandoned. Neighbors understood, without asking questions. The house had become a memorial before anyone admitted it aloud. One evening, Margaret discovered something she had overlooked for years. An old address book tucked inside a kitchen drawer. Most entries meant nothing. Family. Co-workers.
Routine contact.
But one listing lacked a full name. Only initials.
DM.
Beside them appeared a phone number long disconnected. And a single handwritten word. Redwood. Nothing else. No city. No explanation. Just redwood. The discovery reignited everything. Reeves immediately recognized the connection.
DM.
The mysterious letters. The unknown college acquaintance. The crossed-out name. The anonymous references scattered through Elaine's past. A pattern existed. Whether that pattern represented danger remained unknown. But it existed. Investigators traced the number. Records from that era proved incomplete. Ownership changed multiple times. Eventually, they learned the line had once been registered near a small community surrounded by dense forests north of Sacramento. Locals referred to the region simply as Redwood. The coincidence felt impossible to ignore. Within days, Reeves drove there personally. The town looked frozen in another decade. Small diners, weathered storefronts, people who recognized strangers immediately. Memory lingered longer in places like that. And memory, he hoped, might finally cooperate. He carried photographs, asked questions, mentioned Elaine carefully. Most residents offered polite confusion. Then an elderly store owner paused. Not certainty. Recognition. He remembered a young man from years earlier.
Quiet.
Educated. Spent summers helping relatives in the area. Attended college elsewhere. Name started with D. The old man could not remember more. But he remembered one unusual detail. The young man loved taking photographs. Always carried a camera. The information sent chills through Reeves. 2 photographs. An unknown man. A possible connection to Redwood. For the first time in years, separate fragments appeared to move toward one another. Yet frustration remained. No surname. No address. No confirmation. Only another shadow occupying the edges of truth. Back in California's Central Valley, public interest returned once more. Newspaper headlines celebrated the renewed investigation. Mystery man may hold key to Mercer disappearance. Old photographs reopened baffling cold case. People wanted breakthroughs. Communities crave progress even when progress consists entirely of questions. The excitement spread quickly. Too quickly. False tips flooded the department again. Men accused neighbors. Former classmates misidentified acquaintances. Rumors expanded faster than facts. The noise threatened to consume everything. Daniel Reeves worked 12-hour days separating possibility from fantasy. Most leads collapsed immediately. One refused to disappear. A woman living in Oregon contacted investigators after seeing coverage about the case. She claimed to have known a university student during the late 70s named Daniel Mercer. No relation to Elaine. At least none that she knew. He enjoyed photography. Frequently traveled between campus and a Northern California community called Redwood. The surname struck everyone immediately. Mercer. Not common. Not rare. Enough to matter. Enough to provoke dangerous hope. Records eventually confirmed his existence. Daniel Mercer attended the same college as Elaine. Participated in volunteer activities. Appeared in several archived group photographs. Then, sometime around 1980, he vanished from university life entirely. No graduation records. No forwarding information. Nothing. Simply gone. The parallels felt almost unbearable. Another disappearance surrounding the first disappearance. Another missing piece. Another person stepping beyond history's reach. Margaret struggled to process the development. For years, Elaine represented the only mystery. Now another name emerged from darkness. Daniel Mercer.
Who was he?
Friend? Former lover? Witness? Victim? Perpetrator? The investigation possessed no answers. Only possibilities. And possibilities Reeves knew could be dangerous. People begin seeing patterns they desperately want to believe. Still, he could not ignore the coincidence. 2 Mercers. One vanished physically. One vanished socially. Both connected through photographs, initials, and fragments of forgotten memory. Autumn settled across the state. Leaves changed. Rain returned. The abandoned logging road remained exactly as before.
Silent.
Patient. Unchanged by human frustration. Reeves visited once again. He parked where Elaine's car had been discovered and stared into the darkness beyond the tree line. Years had passed. Nothing had spoken. Nothing had emerged. Yet he felt increasingly convinced that the answer did not lie hidden beneath the soil. It lived elsewhere. Inside memory. Inside relationships. Inside histories nobody had fully reconstructed. Cold cases create a dangerous illusion. They encourage investigators to search outward. Wilderness. Evidence. Unknown suspects. But perhaps this mystery demanded the opposite approach. Perhaps the truth existed within circles of trust. Within forgotten friendships. Within names crossed out in old photographs. As the wind moved through the trees, Daniel Reeves recognized an unsettling possibility. Maybe Elaine Mercer did not disappear because somebody entered her life unexpectedly. Maybe she disappeared because somebody returned. And sometimes, the people who return know exactly which doors should have remained forever closed. The autumn of 1988 brought with it a realization that Detective Daniel Reeves had resisted for nearly 3 years. The investigation was no longer about discovering strangers. It was about reconstructing forgotten relationships. Every promising thread led backward. College photographs. Initials in old letters. Anonymous flowers. Cryptic journal entries. A disconnected phone number marked with a single word, Redwood. The future offered nothing. The past, however, refused to stay buried. And somewhere within that past, Reeves believed, lived the beginning of everything. The name Daniel Mercer changed the atmosphere inside the sheriff's department. Not because investigators possessed evidence against him. They possessed almost nothing at all. But names carry power. Mysteries become more tangible once they attach themselves to actual human beings. For years, the unknown man existed as a sketch, a silhouette, a possibility. Now, he possessed a name. Perhaps. A history. Perhaps. A connection to Elaine. Almost certainly. Yet every answer generated deeper uncertainty. University records confirmed that Daniel Mercer participated in volunteer programs alongside Elaine during the late 70s. They appeared in multiple group photographs, shared social circles, attended several campus events. Then, abruptly, his presence vanished. No graduation. No forwarding address. No employment records connected to the university afterward. People remembered him vaguely. Quiet. Intelligent. Private. The descriptions felt eerily familiar. Ordinary. Forgettable. The exact kind of person capable of disappearing into everyday life without attracting attention. Reeves hated that thought. Because ordinary people make terrible mysteries. Monsters are easier. People want monsters. Monsters announce themselves. Ordinary men drink coffee, smile politely, and remain invisible for decades. Margaret Mercer listened carefully as detectives explained their findings. She studied the photographs, studied the face, waited for recognition. Nothing came. No childhood stories. No family references.
No remembered introductions.
If Daniel Mercer mattered, he belonged to a chapter of Elaine's life that remained almost entirely hidden from those closest to her. That possibility hurt. Not because Elaine kept secrets. Everyone keeps secrets, but because those secrets might now be the only road leading toward truth. Winter approached earlier than expected. Rain battered rural highways. The abandoned logging road transformed once again into thick mud and silence. Investigators returned anyway. Reeves insisted upon it. 3 years had passed. Technology improved. Methods changed. Perhaps something previously overlooked waited patiently beneath layers of time. Search teams combed through nearby areas with renewed determination. Metal detectors, ground surveys, detailed mapping. Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
No belongingness.
No evidence. No indication that Elaine herself had ever physically occupied the location where her car was found. The absence had become almost supernatural. Not in a mystical sense. In a practical one. Human beings leave traces. They shed fibers. Create disturbances.
Alter environments.
Yet Elaine Mercer seemed to vanish without disturbing the world around her at all. That fact terrified Reeves more than any violent crime scene he had ever witnessed. Because violence speaks.
Absence whisper.
And whispers endure longer. Then came another letter. This one arrived in December. Handwritten. No return address. Only 4 words. He never stopped watching. The department reacted immediately. Forensic examination produced nothing useful. Common paper.
Common ink. No identifiable prints. No obvious clues.
Yet the message carried weight. He never stopped watching.
Who?
Watching whom? Elaine? Margaret? Investigators? The community itself? The ambiguity felt intentional. The writer wanted questions, not answers. Daniel Reeves placed the second anonymous letter beside the first. She trusted the wrong memory. He never stopped watching. Different wording. Same unsettling rhythm. Both suggested history. Both implied long-term familiarity. Neither offered concrete information. The possibility of an elaborate prank existed. But Reeves could not shake another possibility. Someone close to the truth might be trying to speak without truly speaking. Guilt often behaves strangely. People confess in fragments. Reveal information indirectly. Circle around secrets they cannot fully confront. Perhaps these letters represented conscience rather than cruelty. The idea refused to leave him. Christmas arrived. Another year without closure. Margaret continued setting an extra place at the family table. Relatives no longer questioned the tradition. It had become sacred. Children who once remembered Aunt Elaine clearly now struggled to recall details beyond photographs. Time performed its quiet work, erasing edges, softening voices, turning living memory into inherited memory. Margaret fought against that process with everything she possessed. Stories, photographs, letters. She repeated them endlessly, because forgetting felt like defeat. Meanwhile, Reeves pursued the Redwood connection with increasing intensity. The small community north of Sacramento held fragments of Daniel Mercer's history, but fragments were all it offered. An elderly woman remembered a family renting property during summer months. A mechanic recalled fixing an old pickup truck for a young college student who loved photography. A retired teacher believed Daniel spoke often about returning east after finishing school.
No consistency. No certainty.
Just scattered impressions surviving across a decade. Still, one detail emerged repeatedly. People remembered him as an observer. The kind of person who listened more than he spoke. The kind of person who noticed things others ignored. The kind of person capable of standing quietly at the edge of social gatherings without attracting attention. Reeves found the description deeply unsettling. Observers collect information. Observers understand routines. Observers learn trust patterns. And if an observer chooses to act, they often possess advantages nobody recognizes until afterward. Yet suspicion remained unsupported by evidence. No witness placed Daniel Mercer near Elaine in 1985. No documents connected them during those final years. No proof existed that he even remained in California. The investigation balanced upon possibility alone. Spring of 1989 approached. Nearly 4 years. The phrase cold case appeared more frequently in newspapers. What once sounded temporary now felt permanent. Residents spoke about the disappearance with a tone usually reserved for historical events. Before Elaine disappeared. After Elaine disappeared. The community had unconsciously divided its own timeline. One event. One ordinary woman. One unanswered question. Enough to reshape collective memory forever. Daniel Reeves refused retirement despite encouragement from colleagues. The case anchored him. Walking away felt impossible. Some investigations become professional responsibilities. Others become personal obligations. Elaine Mercer belonged to the second category. He dreamed about timelines. Woke during the night remembering minor details. Carried photographs in his briefcase even during unrelated assignments. The mystery had embedded itself deeply. Perhaps too deeply. One evening, Margaret visited his office unexpectedly. She carried an old cassette recorder. Family gatherings. Birthdays. Ordinary moments preserved on tape. I thought maybe you'd hear something I never noticed, she said. Reeves listened for hours. Laughter. Music. Conversations overlapping. Then, on one recording from 1981, something unexpected emerged. A male voice. Brief. Almost hidden beneath background noise. Elaine laughing. The man saying, "You always remember the places. I only remember the people." Silence followed. Then the recording continued. Margaret could not identify the speaker. Neither could other relatives. The sentence itself meant nothing. Yet Reeves wrote it down immediately. Places. People. The distinction mattered. Elaine remembered places. Someone else remembered people. The words echoed against everything the investigation had become. The logging road. Redwood. Photographs. Forgotten relationships. Memory itself. What if the case had always been about competing memories? What if Elaine and another person carried fundamentally different understandings of the same past? The theory sounded abstract, almost philosophical. Yet abstract ideas sometimes conceal practical truths. Human beings kill for money, for jealousy, for fear. But they also destroy for memory, for old wounds, for versions of history they cannot bear to lose. As rain tapped against office windows late into the night, Daniel Reeves studied the evidence board once again. Hundreds of names, dozens of locations, years of effort, still no solution. And yet one conviction remained stronger than ever. Someone from Elaine Mercer's past had returned. Not suddenly, not violently, patiently, quietly, like a memory stepping back into daylight. And somewhere between trust and recognition, between old photographs and forgotten promises, the path home had vanished forever. The fifth year began not with a breakthrough, but with a question so simple that Detective Daniel Reeves hated himself for never asking it sooner. What if everyone had been searching for the last person who saw Elaine Mercer alive, when they should have been searching for the last person she had forgiven? The thought arrived at 3:30 in the morning. No dramatic revelation. No missing document suddenly discovered in an evidence box. Just exhaustion, memory, and a growing understanding that every promising lead pointed toward emotion rather than opportunity. People kill for gain. People disappear for fear. But people return to old relationships for reasons far more complicated. Regret, nostalgia, loneliness, guilt, hope. And hope, Reeves had learned, could be as dangerous as hatred. By the spring of 1989, the official investigation occupied an entire wall of filing cabinets. New detectives entering the department viewed Elaine's case with a mixture of fascination and caution. Veterans spoke about it in lowered voices. Not because the mystery inspired superstition, because it inspired humility. The case defeated certainty. Every investigator eventually learned the same lesson. Nothing about Elaine Mercer behaved the way ordinary cases behaved. Nothing. The anonymous letters remained unsolved. The midnight phone call remained untraced. The photographs produced questions instead of names. And Daniel Mercer existed in a strange state between fact and folklore. A real person, almost certainly, yet somehow impossible to locate. As if he had stepped out of documented history years before Elaine vanished. Margaret Mercer refused to believe in coincidences. Neither did Reeves. Coincidences happen. But investigations built upon coincidence rarely survive 5 years. Patterns matter. Repetition matters. And the initials DM continued appearing with disturbing consistency. One April afternoon, Reeves returned to the university archives. Dust-covered boxes nobody had touched for decades. Student newsletters. Volunteer rosters. Photography club records. Yearbooks. Meeting minutes. Ordinary administrative debris left behind by thousands of ordinary lives. The kind of material historians love and detectives desperately depend upon. Hours passed. Nothing. Then, buried inside a stack of event registrations, he found a handwritten sign-in sheet from 1978. Elaine Mercer. Clearly visible. 3 lines below her name. Daniel Mercer. No crossed-out ink. No ambiguity. No uncertainty. The first completely verified connection. Reeves stared at the paper for several minutes. 2 names. Same event. Same day. Same place. History reduced to ink on aging paper. Yet even this victory carried frustration. The address listed beside Daniel's name no longer existed. The phone number had long since been reassigned. Time had performed its work efficiently. Still, the confirmation changed everything. For years, Daniel Mercer existed as possibility. Now he existed as fact. The investigation pivoted immediately. Former professors received calls. Old classmates received visits. Retired administrators searched personal records. Memory became evidence. Or, at least the closest thing available. One professor remembered Daniel vividly. Not because he was remarkable. Because he wasn't. Quiet young man, the professor said. Always observing. Always taking photographs. He paid attention to people in ways that made you forget he was in a room. The description chilled Reeves. Observers accumulate knowledge. Knowledge creates intimacy without requiring participation. And intimacy, when unbalanced, can become obsession. The professor recalled one additional detail. Daniel and Elaine worked together during a community literacy program. Months of volunteer work. Regular interaction. Shared responsibilities. Friendship seemed inevitable. Possibly more. Nobody knew. The years had stolen specifics. Yet the existence of a meaningful connection no longer felt hypothetical. It felt undeniable. Back in town, public interest surged again. The local newspaper printed another headline. Old college connection reignites Mercer mystery. Residents debated theories over coffee. Families discussed the case at dinner tables. People wanted answers not merely for Margaret, but for themselves. Because unresolved stories create collective discomfort. They remind communities that normal life rests upon fragile foundations. Elaine represented normality. Responsible. Predictable. Kind. If someone like Elaine could vanish completely, certainty itself became questionable. Summer arrived with oppressive heat. Margaret visited Reeves carrying another box of personal belongings. Items previously considered unimportant. Old notebooks, scrapbooks, receipts, birthday cards. The archaeology of ordinary existence. Investigators examined everything. Most objects revealed nothing. Then a postcard slipped from between pages of an old novel. No envelope. No date. Only a photograph of redwood forests and a short handwritten message. Some places remember us even when people don't. D. The room fell silent. Redwood. Again. Always redwood. Always D. The pattern strengthened until denying it became impossible. Margaret read the message repeatedly. Tears formed slowly. Not from grief. From realization. Her sister had carried entire chapters of life unknown even to family. Not secrets born from deception. Simply private memories. Private relationships. Private histories. The kind every human being possesses. The tragedy was that one of those histories might now hold the key to everything. Detectives traced the postcard. Tourist shop. Northern California. No useful records remained. Another dead end. Another almost answer. Daniel Reeves developed an obsession with language. The anonymous letters. The postcard. The journal entries. He arranged them side by side. She trusted the wrong memory. He never stopped watching. Some places remember us even when people don't. The wording felt consistent. Reflective. Melancholic. Not openly threatening. The voice behind those messages understood memory as something alive. Something dangerous. Something capable of betrayal. The realization disturbed him profoundly. Perhaps the investigation had misunderstood motive from the beginning. Maybe this wasn't about money. Or opportunity. Or even anger. Maybe it was about remembrance. About one person refusing to let the past remain in the past. Autumn approached. 5 years. Half a decade. Children born when Elaine disappeared now attended elementary school. Businesses changed ownership. The world continued moving. The mystery remained perfectly still. One evening, Reeves drove alone to Redwood. Again, he walked through the small town without destination, observing, listening, searching for something he could not define. At an antique store near the edge of town, an elderly owner recognized the photograph he carried. Not immediately, not with certainty, but enough. "I've seen that young man," she said quietly. "Long ago. He used to buy camera supplies from my husband." Her heart pounded. She remembered another detail. He wasn't alone. There was a young woman with him. Dark hair. Quiet smile. They argued once. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But seriously. The kind of argument between people who know each other too well. Could it have been Elaine? The owner refused certainty. Too many years. Too many faces. Yet the possibility struck like lightning. If true, Elaine's connection to Redwood extended far beyond a single word in an address book. It represented shared history, shared memory, shared conflict. Reeves left with more questions than answers. The familiar pattern continued. But something fundamental had shifted. The mystery no longer felt random. It felt intimate. Dangerously intimate. Somewhere in forgotten years, two young people had built a connection strong enough to survive inside old photographs, hidden postcards, anonymous letters, and fading memories. What happened to that connection remained unknown. Why it resurfaced in 1985 remained unknown. But Reeves believed one thing more strongly than ever before. Elaine Mercer did not disappear because a stranger entered her life. She disappeared because somebody who already belonged to her past found a way back into her present. And sometimes, the people who know us best also know exactly how to lead us somewhere from which there is no return. The summer of 1990 arrived with a brutal kind of clarity. 5 years had passed. 5 birthdays missed. 5 Christmas dinners with an empty chair. 5 years of rumors, theories, newspaper headlines, anonymous letters, and roads that led nowhere. For most communities, time softens tragedy. For this one, time sharpened it. Because every year that passed removed another innocent explanation. People stopped talking about voluntary disappearance. They stopped discussing accidents. They stopped believing Elaine Mercer had simply chosen another life. The county had reached an unspoken consensus. Something happened to her. Someone knew. And someone had remained silent for half a decade. Detective Daniel Reeves carried that silence with him everywhere. The case no longer lived inside filing cabinets. It lived inside habits. He drove familiar routes without realizing it. Stopped at diners because witnesses once sat there. Read old statements late into the night, as though repetition itself might reveal hidden meaning. The investigation had become part of his internal landscape. And one question dominated every waking thought. Why did the past